like to welcome back to the Pet Buzz Mark Cushing, author of the new book, Pet Nation. Hi, Mark.
Good morning, all.
Wrapping up the end of the year, right, Dr.
Yes,
Fleck?
we are.
And we're looking forward to 2022. And you always have so many great answers, and we always have like some knockdown dragouts. That's why we love having Mark here. It gets a little feisty sometimes.
I get feisty, or Charlotte gets feisty.
I think it's a combination of both, right, Dr.
Excellent, excellent.
What do you think were some of the most influential news stories in 2021 and why?
So the question is news stories, because there's one story that's not in the news yet. But I think that there were really three. Two involved the same company, headquartered down your part of the world, namely Chewy. I think Chewy's emergence threefold into the teletriage market, into their Vet Connect program, where they work directly with veterinarians and obviously send an olive branch to the veterinary community that they weren't trying to compete tooth and nail, if you will, for every veterinary dollar. And their announcement last week of partnering with Trupanion Insurance to be able to provide an insurance product. So I think, does that calm down all the veterinarian fears about what a Chewy, i.e. what an Amazon type company might do in the veterinary space? I'm sure not, but those are significant steps, and given Chewy's 20+ million customer base and growing, clearly going to have an impact. Number one, I think that group of stories. The other one was the continued month-to-month, year-on-year gains by veterinary practices. So veterinary revenues. So the financial health of the industry was a consistent theme, Charlotte, all year. Didn't slow down. Some weeks differed from others, but for the most part, it didn't slow down, which means there are resources to address problems. And that's the next batch of stories, namely the shortages, which are acute and getting worse with lack of veterinarians, lack of vet techs, and shortages of dogs. And it takes money to attack those problems. And I've told the industry, as challenging as the times are, these are the best times financially you've ever seen. And that means there are resources to address more structural type problems. The last thing, which is related to the dog shortage, I've had the good fortune this year of working with a number of animal welfare and shelter groups and the private sector to try to get them in the same room around the same table and say, can we, develop a sustainable breeding program in this country with standards that people can be comfortable with, and we can systematically address the dog shortage, the rapidly increasing price of dogs, which creates the threat of a luxury market instead of a market available to everyone.
Any comments about what Mark had to say, Dr. Fleck?
Oh, I'd have a lot of comments, but we'd be here all day.
So start. Why don't you just start? I mean, why don't you just...
Yeah, I think that in 2020, there were a lot of
You mean 2021?
No, in 2020.
Okay.
There were a lot of operational issues with veterinarians. In 2021, some of that was relieved where we didn't have the curb service or the what is that? What's another name for the curb service? Concierge. And I think that allowed more abilities for better operation for the veterinarians, better communication with the pet owners, better understanding, and a lot less anxiety with pet parents in trying to understand what was happening with their pets.
2020, unique year that it was growth on top of 2019 in veterinary revenues. So 2020, with its challenges, still was an uptick year, which I think people weren't sure of it, in the middle of COVID. And then 2021 went past it. And millennials and Gen Zs, they are not returning pets at near the pace people feared and predicted. There is, like everything in the pet world, it's regional specific, it's location specific, so it varies. But I've talked to shelter leaders across the country fairly often the last month, and it's not a wave of pets coming back. So millennials and Gen Zs are now in their 20s and 30s. And we've talked before, they're going to run the world for 30 years, and they're not walking away from pets. So the sustainability of the industry is strong, but the supply issues, particularly, you wonder, Charlotte, what happens when it becomes constant that you cannot get in to see a vet when you want to? And we're now
That's
Yeah,
part of it. I mean,
that
we
is.
look at the local humane society here and they're so booked up. And because Dr. Fleck has discounted clinics, I mean, sometimes they're booked up 2 and 3 months in advance. They tell people to go see Dr. Fleck. So, but then again, they both, Dr. Fleck as well as the Humane Society, has a shortage of veterinarians, like you mentioned. We're living in a bubble. We're living in a pandemic bubble, and eventually it'll burst and we'll see what's going to happen.
Here's a question. Here's a question for both of you. I think due to a lot of new players, due to the entrance of telemedicine, due to the alternatives available to people, I think basic questions are getting answered. I think a lot of wellness care is being provided to some level, not necessarily to the gold standard, but people are getting care. I wonder this, and I was in a conversation with leaders yesterday about this: are sick pets getting care? I mean, literally sick pets, that doc would deem not a wellness issue, but actually, treatments necessary here. And are they getting care? And particularly for low-income pet owners, or are people just saying, well, she's going to get over it? I've seen it before, and there's very little data. Let me be precise. There's zero data on sick care versus wellness care. And
absolutely.
I think,
and that's
and
something
that's an issue I'm going to explore pretty early on.
And to be honest with you, I like to think that I motivated you, because this is something that we talked about like 3 months ago, when I said, when your pet is ill and you're dependent, I mean, where we live in Florida, there are a lot of seniors. They live on a fixed income. Okay. Baby boomers that live on a fixed income, and even millennials and people not working. So I'm not saying it's not great to have a pet, but what are actually people doing? What do you find in your practice, Dr. Fleck?
I think Mark's comments are really appropriate and really should come forward, because the sick pet needs to be seen, and needs to be seen immediately. And veterinary practices are having a difficult time trying to accommodate that in their practice on a daily basis. We have in our practices accommodated that by allowing a certain amount of time. And quite frankly, we have a dedicated staff. And if we have to stay a little longer, we do. But I can't say that all staffs will do that. In addition to what you said, I thought was really on point when you said some of the people that have less income, they have a tendency to wait a little longer before they take their ill pet to the vet, thinking, just as you said, let's see if it gets over this particular problem. And there is a time that you can't wait, and they sometimes get past that point in time, which creates a real serious issue, because then it requires a lot more diagnostics, a lot more treatment protocol to get, which is a lot more expense. So it's a horrible, horrible dilemma. And, as you say, that's something that we really have to deal with in the profession.
It's a cloud over the pet economy and industry. It's not yet a tornado or a hurricane. It's not but it's a cloud up there. And over time, if chatter and social media says, love our dogs, love our cats, but there's such a challenge in getting care when you need it, that'll slow things down. I mean, you've heard me, I'm a very positive, optimistic person about this industry. My book reflects that, Pet Nation, but that cloud's got to get addressed. And even this year, the AVMA said in a report, and then came out and doubled down in a statement 2 weeks later, that we don't have a veterinary shortage. And people's eyes just rolled across the country. Like, what are you talking about? Just call 50 practices randomly and ask them their situation. I guarantee you're going to be told, are you kidding? We can't get staff. We can't find a vet. So you've got to take that shortage seriously.
Well, I think you have to take that shortage seriously, but you also have to take the fact that veterinary medicine is extremely costly, especially if you have a sick pet. And I think, yes, if you have a pet that's ill, it's frightening anyway, because you start thinking about what it's going to cost. Whether you go on Dr. Google or not, pet care for a sick animal or veterinary care is going to be expensive. I mean, the prices have gone up, especially in the last year. And that's one of the reasons that your discount practices are jamming and rocking and rolling.
This is all a story about an industry, a sector, a part of the culture that's moved center stage, and it's big time. and there's a lot of money involved and a lot of money flowing into it. And guess what? Whenever that happens, things aren't all pretty. Things aren't all easy, and it's a lot more fun right now than 20 years ago to be in this industry. But guess what? It's got challenges we hadn't seen before. We got a lot of people, though, a lot of smart people working on it, including you two and occasionally me. So, I'm optimistic.
Pet trends for 2022.
Yeah, I think the trends in 2022 are going to be, you're going to see daycare and boarding come back. It was the one sector that got left out of the COVID good news, meaning, the economy, because people didn't use it. Now, to the point you're making about people back to work, I think you're seeing boarding and daycare become more sustainable, and the demand's going to go up, and that's good for that sector. I think you're going to see some of the telemedicine companies fall off the cliff. Early funding didn't sustain them. You're going to see some consolidation there, but you're going to see continued progression of telemedicine as a tool, but it's going to stay controversial. And I'm in the middle of that. And I got to be honest about that. It's, not everybody welcomes it. I also think you're going to see a breakthrough in, can we agree on humane breeding standards and a certification process that might allow consumers and breeders to say, okay, we get it. You want this quality of dog, and you want to be assured of the manner in which it was raised, which would be a big breakthrough. It means the term puppy mill won't go out of the vocabulary, but it'll become less common. And right now it defines breeding, and it shouldn't. And hopefully that change will happen. Otherwise, continued upward.
Any advice for pet owners then for 2022?
Yeah, I would say this: continue your push to get veterinarians and their staff, vet techs, to give you advice. You all want to manage the healthcare of your pet like you manage your own health. And you need tools to do it, and knowledge, and you need docs, team, and others to continue to give you advice, not just care, particularly if the care side is in short supply. And you can do more, and you can learn more, and don't just Google it, but continue your search to get enough information to manage day-to-day healthcare needs for your pet the same way you do with yourself.
Mark, I want to tell you, we are very grateful, and we're very happy to have you on our show every month. We enjoy our lively conversation with you, and we want to wish you the best of health, happiness, and wellness in 2022.
And respect you a great deal.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for viewing our content on Pet Buzz Plus.